welcome to the Heartful Parent Podcast. I'm your host, Christy Keating. In this podcast, we talk about it all, our parenting, our partnering, and our professional lives, because they are all a part of us, and we were never meant to do this alone. Hello, Heartful Parent Podcast listeners. I am so happy to be back with you for another episode of the podcast, and so grateful that you are here to join me. Today, I have a guest that I'm really excited to introduce you to because we dive into something that we haven't talked about really on the podcast before. And it's something that I think you will all find beneficial in your lives as parents, in your lives as partners, if you are with a partner, and in your lives as a professional, if you are doing that juggling act of also having a professional career. Wherever you sort of are in your space, I think the information that my guest today is going to share with you will have something to offer for you. So my guest is a gal by the name of Aparna Venkataraman. Aparna lives in North Carolina in the United States, and she has over 20 years of experience connecting with thousands of families in schools, children's hospitals, nonprofit organizations, child advocacy centers, all sorts of really wonderful places. And she's been doing that since her teens. She is the founder of Beauty in Parenting and coaches parents worldwide. She's also a meditation and breathwork teacher, a motivational speaker, and a wellness advocate. She has a background in psychology, child development, and neuroscience. And I think you'll find that her really approachable nature makes her just so lovely to listen to. She will tell you as well that she's got strong intuition and problem-solving skills and loves guiding parents of babies, toddlers, and teens, as well as couples and extended family members, to empower themselves and build healthy relationships with one another through effective communication, creating boundaries, self-care, confidence building, and lighthearted mindfulness techniques. And in fact, that's exactly what she does in this conversation. She shares with us, we dive into sort of what meditation and breath work are, which may seem obvious, at least for some of it. But she also talks about what the benefits are that she's seen with people who have adopted these practices. And I love this, at the end of my interview with her, Aparna shares 3 different breathwork practices that you can start using today as you work to go from being sort of reactive to being more responsive. And I thought this would be a really lovely practice to do right now, or a really lovely interview to do right now as we dive into what for many is a really busy holiday season. So, in the US and Canada, of course, we've got Thanksgiving, and then that sort of launches us in, worldwide into what can be a very busy holiday season, with Christmas and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa. And I may be missing something in there. Apologies if I am. But I know many of us love this time of year, and many of us also dread it because it brings family together, which can put us in our most reactive states. And it also just can bring stress and overwhelm as we balance kids being out of school, our professional lives, our partnering, and then all the extras that come with the season. So I really believe that what Aparna shares with us today can be a benefit to us all as we move through this and into 2024. I hope you find it helpful. Without further ado, Aparna Venkataraman. Aparna, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to have you on the Heartful Parent Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Christy. I'm very excited to be here.
I've been doing this podcast for, not quite a year yet. And we've talked about a lot of things related to parenting and a lot of things related to safety and even like our professional lives, but we haven't really dug into mindfulness and meditation and what all of those things are and what they can do for us as parents. So I'm really excited to dive into this conversation today. Can you start by, obviously I read your bio, but if you could do a little bit more to kind of introduce how you got into this work and how you created a mindfulness practice that, I guess, for yourself, but also for the families and parents who you work with. How did that all come about?
Yeah, so it's a really beautiful story that I've been sharing a lot of lately in talks and sessions. And so I'm a parent coach and a meditation breathwork teacher, and I have a company called Beauty in Parenting. And I've actually been supporting families for 20 years, since my teen years. And it started out really because I went through a lot as a child. I was a very premature baby, and I spent a lot of time in my youth with a lot of anxiety and depression. And I became someone who was quite sensitive. And I didn't quite know what that meant until I later on, after studying psychology and after working in schools, working in children's hospitals, and doing a lot of work in after school programs with kids of all ages, I went through a life transition where I had some death happen in the family, and I didn't quite know what my purpose was. And so I was a teacher at that time, and I had to move, and I had to shift gears into something new. And that's when I sought out some help from some people to help me, some life coaches, some healers to help me during this life transition of what my purpose was and what I'm here to do. And I knew intuitively that I wanted to keep supporting families. And so during that time, about 2016, 2017, I created my own meditation practice. I have a spiritual teacher who is also an astrologer, and she encouraged me to start listening to, on YouTube, start listening to meditative music, soft sounds, and to learn about the chakras, which are the energy centers of the body. And that visualization and doing that really helped me to recognize the areas of life where I needed to focus on, which were my roots, my foundation, my purpose in life, and my joy and my power. And when I say power, I mean my confidence. And so I spent time for an entire year pretty much listening to the same 1 or 2 30, 40-minute meditative practices. And it wasn't easy. I was pretty stressed out. I was pretty frustrated and couldn't sleep well at that time too, right? Mm-hmm. And so having this meditative practice really helped me to get to know myself. It helped me to get to know what I needed better. It helped me to connect to my heart better. And it helped me to recognize that there's more to life than what's just going on in my head and my to-do list, that I got to know myself better as a person at that time. And so in that healing, I decided to create Beauty in Parenting. And I decided that I wanted to support families not only through parent coaching and helping them with their problems with communication and tantrums and meltdowns and family connection, but I wanted to help families, as I had been doing in, places like the Boys and Girls Club and child advocacy centers and children's hospitals, helping families to be connected and to be present and to feel mindful.
Yeah.
Which isn't something that when you're going through stress or behavioral issues or things with your family, sometimes when you don't know how to voice what's going on, it's a great time to tune inwards to see what you really need as well. Yeah. How you can talk with yourself.
I so appreciate that, the sort of the backstory of that, because
it's a big backstory. I know. Yeah.
It is. And obviously I'm so sorry that, you had a difficult time in your life, but I do also find, and I should use the word "and" there instead of the word "but," because, right. And I actually talked to parents about that. I'm so sorry that you had that experience in your own life. And I am so impressed by folks like yourself who take those really difficult experiences, move through them, and then turn that into something that not only serves them, but serves sort of the greater good, as you said.
Yeah, it's the both sides of the coin of healing, of doing this work, and you'll feel this impact, listeners, soon when I share some of these practices with you, some of these short practices, but doing this work just benefits both you and it also benefits me as well. It's just a very wholehearted thing.
Yeah, which when we can find work that serves both of those purposes. And, obviously I'm also a parent coach. I do I don't do breath work, or I should say not a lot of it. I mean, I do some for myself because sometimes I need it.
Good. Yeah.
But that sense that the work that we're both doing when it serves both us and the people that we're looking to support is a really beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I also love the piece of your story that, that you've been working with populations who need that extra support with the Boys and Girls Club, child advocacy centers. And, in my work as a child sexual abuse prevention advocate, or some of my colleagues are working with child advocacy centers, and they're such incredible places.
Right. So child advocacy centers are, for those who don't know, it's places to support children who are going through abuse or have been abused.
Yeah.
And to work through all of that. I also have helped those in recovery as well, too. Mm-hmm. College students, I've helped a lot of men as well, and a lot of dads as well, too. And in my practice with meditation and breath work, I've supported not just parents, I've supported teens, I've supported college students, grandparents, aunts and uncles, just whomever really needs it. It's really different from parent coaching in that it can be utilized for anyone who can really need that as a life skill and to build upon that sense of presence.
As you were talking, I was going to say, I can't really think of anyone in my life or in my professional work who couldn't benefit from the work that you do and the breath practice and sort of that coming back to ourselves and the mindfulness. But I would love to let you explain, really, we're talking about the benefits of it, but let's get down into the nuts and bolts here of, what are we talking about when we talk about meditation and breath work? And how are those two things different from one another if they are different? And do you find that one is more beneficial for certain folks, or, how do you decide which one to use with which client?
Yeah, I know. So I offer both. And I get that question, all the time, obviously, especially from people who want to learn from me. Meditation is is what I started with. It's a beautiful way to relax and to just get to know your mind and body better. It's not a practice that has to be perfect. I don't think there's any real right way to do it. I think it's just a way that you can really observe your thoughts and get to know, what your needs are, get to know how your mind thinks. And I say observe instead of quieting the mind or feeling like it has to be like nothing up there, that's not an easy thing to do, but just being observant of, how you're talking to yourself, what's going through your mind, and how your body is feeling while those things are happening too. And just being, mindful of your breath, obviously, but just kind of noticing where you're feeling tense in life too. And so when I'm doing meditation sessions, sometimes it's on Zoom, sometimes it's over the phone because it helps people to just listen to my voice and to relax. And sometimes we also use essential oils if they're interested in that to help them just feel relaxed on a deeper level and just have that sense. But I'll usually do a progressive, like a body scan or something that's progressive where we're working through going from the top of the head down to the toes and the feet. And you're just taking the time to slowly notice and relax the different parts of your body too. You never know, where that tension can be. Sometimes if you're frustrated, it's tense in your jaw a lot of the time too. Sometimes if you're really, anxious or stressed, it can be in your stomach and other places like that as well. So, and also sometimes like we tend to kind of subconsciously just clench our fists and things when we're upset and when we're angry too. So I think that's very important for parents and for children to be aware of, especially. And breath work is deep breathing. It's a way to regulate yourself and to, of course, calm down, but just be able to process emotions as well too. Be able to process, happiness and anger and frustration and sadness, grief sometimes too, which is happening a lot right now these days. And breathwork really just helps you to oxygenate your blood. It helps you to deepen your lung capacity. I didn't have a great lung capacity growing up because I was a very premature baby, and I was in the hospital and couldn't breathe very well, and that showed up later in life when I was in like physical fitness classes or doing sports and things like that. I knew that I couldn't, walk a mile or like run or do a lot of that for a long period of time. So it's been really helpful for me in life to have my health, my immunity, to sleep well, and to just be more present with other people too, and from a space where I can connect back to my heart, connect back to what I emotionally and lovingly need, and to be more present with the people around me. And so when I'm working with a client, it's not just the goal of being calm, but it's how can I, be in tune with what you need as well. What are you intuitively telling me? So those are just some of the benefits of meditation breathwork.
Thank you for that description. Most of us have heard of meditation, and I actually, a number of years ago, took a class in mindfulness-based stress reduction.
Yeah.
Which has a lot of beautiful benefits. It's a wonderful course. Mm-hmm. But for whatever reason, and maybe it was the way that it was taught in this particular class, I had this constant feeling like I was doing it wrong, right? Mm-hmm. That I wasn't, because I wasn't able to stay focused on just my breath or, empty my mind, that there was something that I wasn't doing right or something. And so I got at times very frustrated with it. So I really love the way that you described it, which is that it's not an emptying or a blank canvas that we're trying to create, but an observation of our thoughts and then how our bodies and minds are responding to those thoughts. And that, I think if it had been framed for me in that way, it might have been an easier thing for me to kind of engage with and not feel like I was doing it wrong.
Right. I took a couple of years ago a traditional meditation class with the cushions and the bolsters and everything from traditional teachers I knew. And I even had that thought that I was doing it wrong, that I wasn't looking exactly like everyone else was doing. And I had to kind of sit there in the middle of the class and just be like, I'm going to do what feels comfortable to my body and what my body needs the most. And when even when I'm talking about like essential oils and aromatherapy with people, and people are drawn to different scents, and why is that, or why am I drawn to this? Like, everyone's body chemistry is different, and so in our lives as we evolve, we're going to need different things as well too, in our aging process and all sorts of things where we are in life. And I think just having that compassion for yourself really is more of an end goal of having this mindfulness practice too. So I tend to, as a parent coach, as a meditation breathwork teacher, just lean towards ways that I can help you in practical ways in your daily life, in short ways, in ways that can integrate into what you already have, instead of trying to change you into something that it's not going to work out for you. It doesn't feel great, and you don't want to implement it. Then it's not worth the time and energy. But if it's something that resonates with you and that you can actually do with your kids around and your pets and your life and your career, then great.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing for me.
I would love to hear, I mean, you shared at the beginning that you've worked with people from, a variety of backgrounds, parents, obviously, since you primarily work in that space, it sounds like, but you've also worked with people in recovery, elderly folks. I'd love if you are able to share some, obviously keeping everybody's privacy, but share some stories of clients who have gone through this work and what sort of benefits, or what has been the impact of the practice that they've engaged in. How has it changed them?
So I'll share 3 stories with you. One is with a mom. Another is with someone who is an aunt and a caregiver. And the third is with a college student to help you out. So the mom came to me, and she was someone who has twins, but they were younger twins at that time, around 3 and 4. And she had just had a life transition of moving into a new home. And she was trying to work from home and work on her work and couldn't for the life of her, deal with the noise around her with her young children and taking care of them as well. And so she really wanted to learn how to not yell all the time and not yell at her partner and sleep well and focus pretty much. And so we work through some exercises to help her identify what her, her needs and core values were. And I did a little bit of parent coaching with her as well, but we looked through like emotionally, like what was going on with her. She was pretty emotional and stressed at that time during that transition, as I can understand as well. And we did a lot of a progressive body scan, which is what I just talked about too. And we also worked on ways that she could focus and ways that I will share some of these practices as well, so it makes sense, but ways that she could focus and ways that she could set some healthier boundaries around her time. She ended up getting some noise canceling headphones so she could really tune into what she needed and she could focus more. She ended up trying out a couple of different essential oils and where to, like massage them on the body and how she could use them with her child too, to diffuse them at bedtime. She also did work on some breath work, some deep breathing with her children too, to help them. It was a boy and a girl, and they had some different personalities, but they loved to play together at that time. And so to help them have some like comforting objects and some ways that they could relax together and connect together. And so she's a beautiful mom who plays the harp and she plays the piano and she creates her own music as a music teacher. And so she would start to sing and play music for her children at night. And when we created that practice of knowing, okay, this is something that's going to help her family, it really changed everyone's self-care. It really changed their routines. And it really gave them something to look forward to in their days too. And so now she's much better at communicating with her whole family and they feel much more connected as well too.
I love that story. I mean, obviously, kudos to any parents out there who are parenting twins. That is a journey I have not personally had. And then trying to work from home during that and in a new home with that, all the transition that you've just described. Right. I love that she not only used it as a way to care for herself, but to connect with her kids, which is just beautiful. One thing I want to ask you before because I know you've got two more stories to share, but as I'm sort of thinking about this, I mean, obviously it is wonderful when people can have the guidance of someone like you in learning and implementing a practice like this. Is it something that for those parents who may not have the financial means or the time, is this something that families can learn to do on their own? And do you have recommendations for how to go about that?
Yeah. So I always offer a free 30-minute call to not only, learn about my offerings and how you can work with me, but I also do always with anyone, whether they decide to work with me or not, just share one practice or one strategy as well so that you get that more immediate help. I do have free meditations available on my website. I've partnered with an organization here in Philadelphia in the US called Matthew's Mindful Moment, and they release weekly meditations with about 30, 35 teachers worldwide. And so I have about 5 or 6 meditations on there right now for things such as visualizing the good and releasing frustration, inviting in joy, things like that I think topics that parents could use from time to time. And I do have also on my YouTube channel a couple of different short practices and meditations as well too that I've had up there.
I love that. And we will obviously make sure that all of those resources are listed in the show notes for anyone who's listening and, doesn't want to pause right now to go look those things up. Okay. The second story that you said was an aunt, I think, who was also a caregiver. Tell us about her.
Yeah. This is someone who may be 30 years older than me, in 60s or so. And they came to me beginning a spiritual practice, just getting into that, and had been working with a healer and things like that, and wanted to really have someone that they could meet with regularly. We met every week in the evenings, and I do offer evening sessions as well too, because a lot of people love that. So they wanted someone that they could learn from. And I think one of the best things, like I was talking about with my own practice when I created it, is to have that consistency of the same voice or same practice that you're learning from. And so she wanted someone who could teach her kind of a variety of practices, but in the same kind of style as well too. So she came to me just, processing a lot of trauma, having issues communicating with her partner at that time, and just feeling disconnected from her heart. Not just, going through days where she was just really stressed and frustrated and needed that connection to, this was during the pandemic, needed that connection to herself at times when she didn't have that connection immediately to other people anymore. And so we worked together for about a year and a half going through that practice. And I've had clients who have come to me working for a session. I've had clients who have come to me working for a longer period of time. It just depends on how much you want to practice and learn. But I think we ended up doing a lot of visualizations of like beach scenes and nature scenes and different colors and going through the chakras, that traditional practice I learned very early on, and finding things that, visualization she could use when we were between sessions, and that she loved, these places that she loved and wish she could visit and be in more often. But we worked a lot on positive affirmations and ways that she could just, really get out of that head and those thoughts of like, I'm not a great person. I feel all this guilt and, my family's X, Y, and Z and all of this too. And just connect back to what she needed and who she was as a person as well too. I think, we go through life and sometimes we are in those moments of life where we're in a very reflective period, and that can be hard and lonely sometimes. But when we get in touch with what we need and find ways to relax, and help her to sleep well, it was really, really fruitful for her. And she ended up practicing a lot of mindfulness and using oils with her partner. They ended up finding ways to practice, to like enjoy date night and have self-care time together. And she ended up finding more of a community of like-minded people that she could enjoy life with too.
I love that. I love that, especially the contrast between, a parent who's actively parenting young twins, and then somebody who is in their 60s, which, for me, many of my listeners know this, I'm 50, so 60 doesn't seem so old to me anymore. It's definitely, you're in a different stage of life at that point.
Yeah.
And so I love that had applicability for her. You also mentioned that you worked with a college student, and
yeah,
I have certainly, I'm sure you've seen this with your clients as well, that our tweens and teens and young adults are experiencing just unheard of before levels of anxiety and depression. It's really leaving experts and parents kind of baffled as, how do we help them? And it sounds like meditation and breath work can play a role there too. So tell us about that one.
Yeah. So this is a wonderful college student. This was during the time of the pandemic, and she had just gone through COVID, and having COVID, had just moved the year before from the West Coast, and she's on the East Coast. And she'd been going through a lot of depression and a lot of anxiousness and a lot of stress with all of her work. She's a PhD student. And, we met every other week for pretty much a year. And she just didn't have a great self-care practice. She's someone who had ADHD and focus issues. And at the recommendation of her therapist, she sought out someone who was a breathwork teacher and to help with deep breathing and just like processing everything she was going through. At the time, she had some issues with her family, and we really looked at her self-care. We looked at her bedtime. She was staying up late. We looked at her mealtime and nutrition. She didn't enjoy cooking. She didn't really have regular meal times and didn't eat enough. And we really looked at the things that were really stressing her out, whether that's her boss, whether that's her schoolwork, whether that's things with relationships, and having more self-care time, like what she really wanted to do. So she ended up learning a series of practices with me, and it's just starting out. I remember for the first month, we did the same practices over and over again. same 3 to 4 practices, and just like learning how your body responds to that, learning how it feels to, do things like expanding the belly and expanding the chest and slowing down a little bit more. And she found that it made her calmer. She found that she could pause in her communication with other people, and she wasn't like lashing out at people and just like internalizing things, or, taking things personally all the time. She found that she could ask for what she needed. It was easier to make friends for her. Her relationships got better, and she started creating her own self-care practice. She started treating herself more. She started dressing up more and make herself feel better, and to not always be in this cycle of work and, work and school all the time. She started taking care of her own needs, and she definitely started having a sleep routine that was better for her and for work. Her focus was much better. She ate really well and started cooking together with her partner. And her relationship with her family got much better because she knew how to not react and how to communicate with them. And so she's doing much better, and her health got much better as well with all of that.
One of the things that I talk with parents a lot, and people on the podcast have probably heard me talk about, is like the difference between being reactive and responsive. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like the work that you did with this particular gal was really to help with that, being more responsive and less reactive, which, as you said, right, it improves our relationships, it improves our ability to focus, it improves our self-care, like all of those things when we can be thoughtful and intentional in how we respond, as opposed to just reacting, in the moment. Mm-hmm. That's a beautiful thing, and something that I think any and all of us can benefit from, however we get there, whether it's through meditation and breath work or some other practice. Learning that responsivity instead of reactivity is so beautiful. Aparna, I know you've got some, short little, a few quick breathwork practices that that you'd love to guide everybody in. And I just want to give everyone who's listening sort of the reminder, as I said in the intro to this, that these are practices best done when you are sitting somewhere comfortable that is not your vehicle behind the steering wheel. As all those warnings go, not while you are using heavy machinery or anything of that nature. Please be careful, smart, wise about this. But the practices that Aparna is going to share with you can be used as you move through your day and are looking for those moments where you need a little bit of that calm down and to bring that responsiveness back when you're feeling reactive. So I just wanted to give that as the caveat to this. But Aparna, what can you share with us that can give listeners something that they can try along these lines?
Yeah. So I will share a quick practice for where you're feeling angry or frustrated as well.
Something most parents can relate to.
Yeah. If you're just like not having a great day. And I know for me, usually it's like if I haven't slept well, or I just like I have a lot on my mind, or I like have something I really want to voice to somebody, but I want to be a little gentler in that sense too. Hopefully this helps, the parents and caregivers or anyone who needs it out there. I love to have the visualization of when you're holding a dandelion and you're about to blow it. This is a really beautiful one that's it's sort of similar to like if you've got like a paper bag and you're just kind of blowing into it and things like that. But you can also do this with bubbles as well too. And so a lot of these, as you can tell, I've taught toddlers, these kinds of practices to stay a little bit more mindful. I've taught pretty much children of many ages too. And so this, I think, is just a really sweet one that I think a lot of us could benefit from too. So I like to rub my palms together a little bit, just to create a little bit of warmth and friction. And I like to just kind of place it over the heart, place both hands over the heart for a second and just notice for a moment, taking an inhale for 3 seconds, 1, 2, and 3. Through the nose and exhaling, 3, 2, and 1. And then having the visualization of maybe holding up bubbles or holding up a dandelion, and inhaling for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3, holding this dandelion close to your face. And then making that whistling noise to blow away the petals. For 3 seconds. 3, 2, and 1. We'll do that one more time. Inhaling 1, 2, and 3. Holding it, and 3, 2, and 1. And this is a great one where you can honestly quickly just release that frustration, that anger in a way that is healthy, in a way that just lets you pause before you maybe react to something like we were talking about, or just move on with your day too.
Okay, I really love that, because what you did with that, at least for me, and I did it, you may have seen I put myself on mute and did it along with you. What that did for me, as opposed to just saying to somebody like, take some deep breaths, is having the visual. And I did imagine holding a dandelion, made it feel, well, first of all, and maybe this is just me, listeners, sorry if this is just me, but it actually, like, I almost imagined that I was standing in this beautiful field, right, where there were wildflowers and dandelions and, all sorts of things around me. And that was calming in and of itself. I don't know why my brain did that, but it did. But then just having something to imagine blowing, as opposed to just taking that deep breath, made it feel much more accessible to me. So I love that one. And it's quick. It's so quick. Like, you could do that right in a few moments, when you're right before you're about to yell at your 4-year-old for coloring on the walls.
Yeah. And so this is something that I teach about, these self-regulation practices, but also co-regulation, which is being able to be with your child or your partner or loved one or whomever, and doing this with them, teaching them these kinds of practices. I have had, clients that I've worked with who they did breath work together, and they learned all these together so that they could, children could independently just have this. It's a great one to do after school or before bedtime, or maybe even in the morning at drop off. Just be in the moment of your day and of being like, I'm here. This is how I'm feeling. And we'll feel that anger rise up, in our bodies when we're stressed, and we'll feel our chest tense up. But finding that way to just settle into things. It's not fun feeling angry or frustrated, but just knowing that we have a healthier way to release, I think, it just creates a nice ripple effect, a nice impact for us, and a ripple effect on others too.
I love that. I'm imagining that, that's something I could very easily teach to my 6-year-old and my high schooler, right? That both of them, that would be accessible to them. I think you have another one that you can share.
Yeah, I do have one for focus. I love to do the one for focus with an essential oil. If you have that, if not, that's okay. You can still rub your palms together if you're listening. And I like to put a drop of an essential oil, something that's, I was going to say calming, but actually this is more for focus. And so something that's a little bit more mentally stimulating. It could be a tree oil, like, frankincense or spruce. It could be something uplifting, like a citrus, like an orange or a grapefruit. Something that's going to kind of get you a little bit into your mental space. When you have brain fog, or just you've got a lot of things you want to focus on, it's a really nice one to do. So placing a drop of an essential oil, or rolling a drop of an essential oil in your hands if you want to, and just cupping your hands over your nose, not touching your nose, but just cupping it, closing your eyes, and just taking that nice inhale. 1, 2, and 3. And you can use a visualization if you want to, of anything that is calming for you, anything that feels uplifting for you. That natural breathing of inhaling for a couple seconds and just exhaling. And I do this when I want to shift my mood as well too. If I'm just kind of, having a day where I'm feeling off or something has happened in my day and I need to shift back to what I was working on. This is a wonderful practice that I did with the first mom that I talked about who had the young children around her and wanted to focus on work and couldn't do that. This is a great one to do with headphones or noise canceling headphones. I think parents should probably come with some noise canceling headphones. I think they could use that or earplugs when they need it the most.
Yes.
Even children, can do it too. I mean, for homework and other things too. But it is, a lot of parents do come to me and they are dealing with focus issues, ADHD, some neurodivergence as well too. And I think that in this time of year, especially as we're going, getting through the school year over here in the Northern Hemisphere, I think just having these quick things that we can use as well to connect to like, okay, this is what's going on for me. This is how I can be most productive is really nice.
I love that because I'll sit down at my desk and it is difficult to stay focused, especially in this day and age where, you've got emails over here and, other notifications popping up here. And then, somebody walks by the house and the dog barks and you've got all of these things going on. And then, a child knocks on the door and wants to come in or whatever it might be. I could see this one being really handy. I could also see my teenager using this one with the essential oil to help her focus on, getting done what needs to get done so she can move on with her day. I love that. We're coming to the end of our time together. You had mentioned the body scan. I want to just give you a minute to sort of describe for folks what that is. And then we'll make sure people know where they can find you.
Sure. So a body scan is a wonderful thing that will help you from head to your toes. I love to do this one if I'm needing some really deep sleep, and sleep is a big thing that I work with maybe 80% of my clients on is how can I have longer sleep and deeper sleep as well too to feel rested. Many of them are going through sometimes, hormonal things or health issues or whatnot, like I had mentioned, but it's just a nice way to do this. And also teaching your partner how to do this or with your child to have a bedtime routine too. You can, we can create a song together and things like that to make it easier at bedtime. But really just, starting from the top of your head and just sitting in a comfortable position. I like to place my hands on my knees. You can place it on the ground or anywhere that feels comfortable for you. I like to place them face down on my knees and just noticing the ways that you can soften. And your breathing can be natural, but just softening, the top of your head, forehead, the temples, the jawline, the tongue and the mouth, which tend to tense up, and the throat, letting your shoulders relax and drop, letting your fingers and arms relax, in your chest. You feel everything kind of slowly melt downwards, your stomach a little bit, and your hips, thighs and knees, your calf muscles, your ankles, and each of your toes. And listener, this is definitely one that you can do when you want to deeply relax. That was deeply relaxing for me. I don't know about you, Christy, but I will probably take a nap at some point later. But that's one you can do with an essential oil as well. Just very quickly with oils, I love to, I offer a free wellness consult on my website, but I love to just share the practice of the back of the neck and the bottoms of the feet are great ways to just help you deeply relax with a drop of an oil or less, to just massage it into there when you just really need that relaxation too. It's great for travel as well. I did that a lot on travel recently.
I mean, I don't know very many people that wouldn't benefit from deeper sleep, longer sleep. I'm certainly one of those people that could stand to sleep a little bit. Well, I could certainly go to bed earlier and, sleep more deeply while I am asleep. So I'm familiar with the idea of the body scan, but it's not something that I've made into a practice. So that may be something I work on doing. Aparna, I'm so grateful to you for sharing not just sort of the history of this or the benefits of it, but really diving into and sharing with everybody a couple of pretty quick and easy practices that they can use for, as you said, for managing anger, frustration, for managing focus or a needed mood shift, and then for relaxation. We will put all of the ways I know you've got a Facebook page and your website and everything. We will put that in the show notes for folks, but you also have a free self-care and priorities chart that you are offering to folks. Where can they get that?
This is, if you go to beautyinparenting.com, it is at the top of the page there to download that free chart. This is a purple chart I created 2 years ago that has basically ways that you can identify your priorities with your, things like chores and your to-do list and your like school tasks and self-care time. And you can really schedule in more self-care time and also celebrate some weekly wins with your family as well too, or for yourself. So this is just a nice way to, even just think more about your self-care and ways that you want to show up for yourself more too.
I love that. Thank you so much for that. And again, we'll make sure that all of those links for anyone that, whose memory is bad in terms of remembering links, you'll be able to find all of those on my website that will link you right to Aparna's website. Thank you so much for being here and sharing this with everybody today.
You're so welcome, Christy. I really appreciate being here, and I hope everyone took away something that they could use. Thank you.
Thanks. Oh, goodness. Thank you so much for joining me, podcast listeners. I'm so grateful week after week that you keep showing up and listening to the podcast. This is a true labor of love for me and all the guests who join me. And I hope today's conversation was helpful to you. I hope it's something that you can try out with your children or on your own as you work through the season and just life in general. If you found this conversation helpful or one of the other episodes of the podcast, I'd be so grateful if you did two things for me. First, if you would hop on to your favorite podcast platform, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Google, Spotify, wherever it is, and drop a 5-star rating in there. And then secondly, if you would be willing to share this with another parent or another person who you think would benefit from these conversations. The more the word spreads, the easier it is for me to continue doing the podcast. And so any help that you can provide in getting the word out there about this content is always appreciated, especially as you dive into this busy time of year. I'm so grateful, and I look forward to seeing you next week for another episode of the Heartful Parent Podcast. See you then. Cheers.